Hello, this is the Newborn Nurse Podcast, and I'm your host, Rachel Ramsey, RN, BSN. This podcast is for expectant and new mothers and families, and we are here to share with you a list of incredible newborn resources, services, professionals, and tips and tricks. We hope the info on this podcast informs you, helps you, and most of all, eases any anxieties, gives you confidence, and empowers you to be the best parent possible. Knowledge really is power, and we are here to inform and guide you through this season with your new baby. I am your host, Rachel Ramsey. I am a registered nurse and certified postpartum doula. I have 17 years of professional neonatal and maternal nursing experience and 5 years as the owner of the Newborn Nurse, a Nashville-based service that provides in-home care and newborn education to new families. I hope this podcast helps each of you in some big or small way. Biggest of congratulations and thanks for listening. You've got this, Mama, and we are here for you. As a reminder, any information you hear on this podcast is not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Please see the full disclaimer on our website for more details. Website is listed in show notes. Hey guys, this is Rachel back from the Newborn Nurse, and today I have a very special guest. I have Angela Doss, and I met her this past fall at a birth workers retreat. She is an amazing, shiny, spirited, wonderful person, and she is an IBCLC lactation consultant. And today we're going to talk to her about all kinds of breastfeeding advice and information. But first, I'd love to just introduce you. If you'll let us know a little bit about yourself, your credentials, and how you got into the work of breastfeeding.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Angela Doss. I own Motherhood, Untamed. I'm a practice out of Colorado. As Rachel said, we met last fall at a magical birth workers retreat. I am an IBCLC, which if you're like, what is that? Means Internationally Board Certified Lactation Consultant. It is the top tier in kind of specialty of breastfeeding. I also hold my certified lactation counselor credential and my certified new parent educator. I got into this work, as many of us do, entering into motherhood. I found a little bit of a lack of the type of support that I really was hopeful for and wanted, and it kind of sets a little seed of maybe this is where you're going to end up being. So it took a while to get there. My oldest is almost 9, and I've been in this field since 2021. So it was really kind of that second baby, pregnant with my third, and COVID and a pandemic and lockdown that made me go, you know what, like, we're going to make a major pivot here. And so I made a very natural transition from being the business director and marketing development director at a roofing company to being a lactation consultant. It took me a couple of years to be able to sit for my IBCLC exam because you do have to have a lot of hands-on mom and baby experience, and I don't have a nursing background. And so I did a lot of, I'm a leader with Lactation League. I did a lot of volunteer work. And now here I am.
And it suits you so well. You're so good at what you do. Do you want to talk a little bit about your breastfeeding journey? Did you nurse all 3 of your kids, or what does that kind of look like with your own personal breastfeeding journey?
Just weaned my last baby. We have 3 kids, and I can't really say just weaned, but like in July of last year. So, and I added it up, and I spent nearly 7 years of my life breastfeeding.
Wow.
So my youngest, my firstborn, will just start chronological order. My firstborn, and first like enter into what is this like? I nursed him until right at like 13 months. And the last 4 or 5 months was really tough. Like that child would have liked to not breastfeed anymore. I was so determined to make it to 1. My husband is 6'5" for some reference. And so as humans do, babies come in all shapes and sizes as well. And my babies were always very big babies. They were chunky. They were like, nobody was concerned about weight gain, but breastfeeding was hard. Like it sounded like waterboarding my kid. He was eating, but he was like coughing and stuttering. And everybody's like, this is great. This is fine. This is great. And I'm like, is it? And then my second, I breastfed her for 2 years, and she had lip and tongue tie, and for the first 11 weeks of her life was extremely colic and ate every hour to hour and a half and was miserable. We were miserable. We were not okay. But again, she was very fat and nobody cared. And I wasn't in pain. And so literally nobody cared. They were like, well, you just have a colic baby. And that really, you asked what like set the seed and speared me into this. And really it was my experience with my second born of like, this is not okay, because eventually I did my own like mom's group research, as we moms do, and ended up at a pediatric dentist to be like, just look at her. Does she have, she clicks and she does all this stuff that my firstborn did, but they told me that was normal. And she got a frenectomy. That's the fancy word for the release of the lip and tongue tie. And it changed our lives. And I'm not saying it's a magic wand, but for her, like that was absolutely the thing she needed. And so we moved through that, and I got even more passionate about breastfeeding and parenthood and just like helping families like really sit in this season, enjoy it, and not be kind of always seeking for the next thing, like when they sleep through the night and when they do this and when we're done with this phase, like really settling in. And then we had our third babe. And at that point, I was a CLC. I had all my business open and going. I opened my business as a CLC, as a certified lactation counselor. And again, he had ties. We had, the struggle. So I breastfed my babies through a lot of the things that I support families through. And I breastfed for a very long time. And I joke often that 10 years ago, Angela would meet me and be like, you are a hippie. And the longer I work with moms and babies, the more hippie I become.
One thing I will say at our retreat, we had all these different breakout sessions and we're sitting in meetings, and Angela would always get up and run away to go to her phone to reach out to her clients if they had a question. So I have seen it firsthand how all in and how caring and how loving you are for each individual client. It matters, everything that happens with your families. You're so wonderful for that. Can we talk about different levels or the different lactation consultant credentials, like the IBCLC versus the CLC? Can we talk a little bit about that? Let's say there's a new mom and she needs lactation help and she sees all these different credentials. Can you talk about how she may choose a certain lactation consultant versus another?
Sure. It's really confusing, and I feel really bad for parents because it's hard, right? Like there are doulas that support breastfeeding just because they've had breastfeeding experiences themselves, and I by no means undercount any breastfeeding support. We need peer support through like the Leche League and doula support, and people that just have they're coming with knowledge from their own experience, whether it's supporting clients or breastfeeding kids themselves. And then there is the certified lactation counselor, which is through Healthy Children's, and it's a 52-hour class. You study a lot about the basics of lactation and how milk production works, the anatomy of breast, the anatomy of great latch, a lot of the things that can go wrong, mastitis, clogs, all of those things. And then you do take an exam, but there's no hands-on with families required to actually be out there in the wild, as I like to call it, practicing. And so that's one of the credentials that often like your labor and delivery nurses have. It's a pretty attainable credential for most people. And then there is and those are lactation counselors, so certified lactation counselors. And that's what I opened my business as. I worked underneath a midwifery clinic for my supervision hours. I was out in the wild providing care. I hired an IBCLC that was also in private practice to like go through my caseloads with me and say, this is what I did, and kind of really mentor me, because my goal was to become a lactation consultant, and a lactation consultant is the IBCLC. They are really the only ones that are like consultant under it. I know it's such alphabet soup and it's semantics, but the difference is that they have those. For many of us, it's either 500 hours if you're coming from kind of a healthcare background, or you have a specific, like you're working. If somebody came and was trying to become an IBCLC under me as an IBCLC, I would be their head mentor, and they would need 500 hours working with me to be able to sit for their exam, plus 95 hours of education specific to lactation. Okay. So there's just it's a lot more challenging to become an IBCLC. You have to have 14 classes in health and science. So a lot of people are coming from medical backgrounds, but you don't have to. And then you have to have your 95 hours of lactation, so almost twice as much lactation education classroom. And then it's 500 or 1,000 hours. For me, it was 1,000 clinical hours with moms and babies.
Oh,
I
wow.
mean, and when you think about that's working full time for over 6 months, if we're looking at that. So
Mhm.
there is a vast difference, but like tired moms don't know that you're on a mom's group. So that is really tricky. And it's also a little catty in the lactation world, I won't lie.
Yeah.
And so,
I was going to say, I'll say this as well. I tell a lot of our moms in different cities all over the US, they'll say, "Oh, hey, I need a lactation consultant." And I'm like, I have no idea in, Buffalo, New York, who's good. So if you go on a mom's group, a lot of times, no matter what their credentials are, obviously the IBCLC has, more experience and it's harder to get your IBCLC, but always make sure you have a reputable person.
yeah,
Hopefully that is like, referred by some other moms because you can get some great lactation consultants and then you can get some that aren't as great. So I think it's good to have the credential, but then also the referral and the word of mouth, I think, would you agree, is like so important?
totally. And
Yeah.
I think like, I mean, a good chunk of my business comes from the moms groups, and that's where moms are. Social media is like one of the main search engines
Yeah.
for like today's generation. I sound like the 40-year-old that I am, but
Yeah.
like we live on social media. We are on our phones, and so absolutely, like if you're looking for support in whatever community you are in, not just for lactation, but pediatric dentists or a postpartum doula
Hmm.
or, all of these things, the best place is to go to that proverbial village
Hmm.
and ask who moms that have gone before you, who they're using, who they're loving, because that's like you grow there. If you're a great practitioner, you're going to be the one that they're like, oh, this person, and that's true for whatever modality of care you're giving to the community.
I've never thought of it like that, that those Facebook moms groups can be your village. It's so true,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we're
Especially like
alone out
here in
here in the wild.
Nashville, we have a lot of people who come from other cities or states and they're transplants here and they don't have their parents or their sisters. They have no
Yeah.
one. And so that Facebook moms group or even like a neighborhood group wherever you're living can be your village. Hey everyone, this is Rachel from the Newborn Nurse. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you are learning some valuable and helpful information on this podcast. If you would like to learn even more, we have something new and exciting to tell you about. We have created our Newborn Care 101 online video course for first-time expectant parents or parents who want a refresher course in newborns. This course is taught by me, a neonatal newborn nurse and expert of 18 years and founder of the Newborn Nurse. It's so super important to make sure you are gathering your newborn information from a trusted and experienced source as you prepare for your baby. This course is a series of educational videos where you will learn everything you need to know about newborn care all in one spot without having to search and scroll all over the internet. You can take this course in the comfort of your own home and nursery with your own baby equipment and at your own pace. You can also rewatch the videos as many times as you would like with unlimited access to these videos for an entire year. Many of the families who have already taken this course have reached out to tell me how helpful it is to go back and be able to review these videos once their baby has arrived. In this course, you will learn swaddling, diapering, bathing, breastfeeding, bottle feeding, burping, cord care, how to use your breast pump and car seat, how to prevent mastitis, calm a fussy baby, and much, much more. You also get free printables, including a checklist of what to pack in your hospital bag, a must-haves product list for your baby registry, and the best part, you get free access to our Facebook online community group where you can meet other new moms and also have access to me, Rachel, for any newborn questions you have along your journey. The families who have taken this course already have raved about it and have felt it has been super helpful and allowed them to feel prepared, organized, ready, and knowledgeable about their newborn. For our podcast listeners, you can receive 10% off this course with coupon code, all caps, podcast, at the checkout. The link to purchase this course is in the show notes below. Thank you for being here and best wishes to you and your family. I hope you feel loved, supported, and empowered as a new parent. Thanks so much and have a great day. Can we talk a little bit about tongue ties? I know you said with your first and
Yeah.
second child, your baby had a tongue tie. Let's talk about kind of what that looks like, what a feeding might look like with a mom if she's questioning if her baby has a tongue tie, and just all the things about that, and how families can tell if they are in need of support for a tongue tie.
Yeah, this is one of those ones, Rachel, you had said like not all lactation consultants are the same. And this is one of the things that really highlights When you go through all those 95 hours of training and the 1,000 hours of clinical experience and sitting for the exam, of course you learn like everybody has a frenula underneath their tongue, like this tissue, right? And that's normal human anatomy. And we learn like short presentations of that and kind of everything looking at a visual picture. And we, yes, talk about symptoms. So it might look like a baby that's coughing and choking and sputtering, and you might hear like, well, I have a very fast letdown, or they can't handle my letdown, is something I hear from parents consistently. It can translate, like my second kiddo, to colicky behavior because they're having a lot of air ingestion as they're eating. And then they're miserable little gassy humans. It can be the baby that like just falls asleep at the breast because it's literally so hard. And falling asleep at the breast, let me be clear, is totally normal newborn behavior. Like they can eat and sleep at the same time. That's usually what they're doing. But like that, like cashing out, that like going blank, that
worn
like,
out,
quitting.
they're worn
like,
out.
Yeah, that kind of behavior. And so when it comes to lactation consultants, you really need to, and because of my personal history and being so passionate about it, I've sought out so much training and read so many books about oral restrictions and how are we really identifying them? How are we really supporting families? Are they overdiagnosed? As a lactation consultant, we do not diagnose. We assess function, and then we refer to like a pediatric dentist who would do the evaluation, diagnosis, and treatment if needed. But it is definitely, it's one of those areas that I feel so deeply for families, because it's really hard to have this new baby that you love more than you ever even knew you could love something, and have professionals arguing. And in the tongue tie space, that's kind of what we have going on, right? We have some really horrible, atrocious press with, like, there was a New York Times article about, I think it was called The Booming Business of Tongue Ties. And it was talking about overdiagnosis, overtreatment, and some really horrible outcomes. And in general, the frenectomy procedure is a pretty low risk procedure for these infants. But it just is like the American Academy of Pediatrics is kind of like, only the most severe tongue ties need to be released. And then lactation consultants kind of vary between like everything needs to be released. And I'm definitely more slow to move towards suggesting a surgery for a family. But it is one of those areas that like families feel like the ping pong ball of like, you'll get a lot of, well, my pediatrician said they're fine, but mom has all those symptoms I just outlined. And then they maybe meet a lactation consultant at their pediatrician's office or at their hospital's clinic, and they're like, oh, maybe, but I don't know, I don't think so. And then they meet somebody like me in private practice that does a functional exam, and that really looks like me in your baby's face, walking you through how I'm asking their tongue to move. And we're talking about reflexive babies that I can ask to suckle. It's just different. If someone just looks at your baby and says, I don't think they have a tongue tie, they didn't evaluate your baby. So I think that's the biggest thing I wish that parents knew when it comes to ties, is that, first of all, I see them being the ping pong ball, and my heart is with them. But if you are struggling with feeding your baby, even if you're not in pain and they're gaining weight, but something feels off on your parent intuition, and they're clicky, they're gassy, they're, all these things that the internet is telling you are symptoms of tongue ties, but you've been told that's not the case for you, I would seek somebody that has the
second
ability.
Opinion.
Go the second opinion route. Go the third, the fourth, the fifth. I mean, because the training is different, because there definitely are those people that are like, I don't believe in tongue ties, which I just don't understand, because you guys, this is not Santa Claus. Like, it's not Santa Claus. We don't just get to say, I don't believe in like an anatomical restriction that can impede the tongue's ability to do its job. So get a second opinion. Find somebody that's really going to do that functional evaluation for you and be able to help coach you through kind of helping that tongue relearn how to do what it's supposed to do too, if a procedure is done.
I always tell moms, nowadays, especially with the internet, you're going to be getting a lot of conflicting opinions, and it is very overwhelming, which causes anxiety.
Yeah.
I feel like life was easier before social media. But anyway, if you are getting conflicting, pulling opinions, like we mentioned, you can get another opinion. Or I always say just sit back and kind of trust your mommy gut instinct, because no matter what professional is looking at your baby, I feel like at the end of the day, that mom gut instinct will kind of lead you into where you're supposed to be going with your baby. And then kind of talking a little bit about the tongue tie in itself. If you are a mom and you have tried everything, if you have a gassy, fussy baby and you have tried the gas drops and you have cut dairy and your baby is still fussy, something is not right. And a lot of times it is a tongue tie. And again, like, pediatric dentists, especially here in Nashville, we have one that I refer to. She does a laser revision, which is a
Yep.
very simple, she actually did her own tongue just to see what it felt like. And she said it didn't hurt at all. So you can get laser
One way to do some
revision.
research.
Yeah, she did it on herself, but you can have a laser revision. Another thing, she actually just emailed me the other day and said, with the tongue tie revisions, you do have stretches you have to do for several weeks after. That way, that ligament doesn't grow back. And also, it isn't just the ligament under the tongue. As you know, there are lots of different ligaments all around the mouth, from the upper lip, around the cheeks. So she looks at all of those. But she does have a procedure now, and this may be a new and kind of upcoming thing, but instead of the laser, she does one with just like 1 or 2 stitches, she said. And with that, you don't have to do all the stretches, because the stretches can be really intimidating and anxiety provoking for new parents. So anyway, there's lots of different ways you can
Yeah.
kind of figure out what your baby's doing with a tongue tie. But going back to the beginning, is if your baby is consistently fussy and gassy and all the things you just mentioned, something is off, and it's good to try to get to the root of that, because the sooner you can fix that issue, the better off your, long-term breastfeeding journey will be,
Yeah, totally.
if you can get that fixed. Let's switch
I will
gears. Oh,
say
sorry.
that just in the aftercare thing, what you're saying, that stretching, so it's not a ligament, it's fascial
Tissue.
material, tissue that we're releasing, potentially from cheeks, lip, and tongue. And you have to do active wound management. We're elevating that tongue up to keep that long range of motion. I do tell families that a frenula is going to regrow. And so it's not that it's not going to regrow, but it will regrow, but we want it that long and stretchy instead of this short and squatty when it regrows. And I have not run into any or heard anything in the continuing ed when it comes to infant releases of suturing the release. So you still do the CO2 release, you remove that tissue. In an adult or teens or even like 2-year-olds and above, they are suturing, because getting in that mouth of a smaller but older child is difficult. But with our infants, it usually really is, parents need to be on board and need to be prepared for the fact that if we're going through this procedure, then we want the bang for our buck. We want the benefit for our baby lifelong of this procedure. And that does look like a lot of aftercare. And so that's another, like, you need to have somebody on your team. It should be like a lactation consultant that's really well versed in this, because you're going to be meeting with them before the procedure, after the procedure, and kind of helping you pivot if that's feeling really tricky. How can we get the benefit of the stretches but not have it feel like this is really, really hard?
Mm-hmm. Another thing, because if a parent is told their baby has a tongue tie, they're going to pro-con all of it. And one thing I learned through our local pediatric dentist is a tongue tie, basically, it doesn't just affect breastfeeding, it also can affect speech and chewing as they get older. So it's kind of a long-term fix. It isn't just for breastfeeding.
Yeah, it's like, that's just like the first presentation. And it's not just breastfeeding, it's bottle feeding too, right? If you're listening to this and you're a bottle feeding family and your baby is clicky on the bottle, you're hearing a lot of with feeding and they're dribbling. If you are the family that is grabbing a burp cloth and holding it right here as you're bottle feeding your baby, that baby can't form a seal. And why can't they form a seal? And it might be oral, it might be tension. We might just need to like release some tension in the cheeks and help that tongue get stronger. And it might be oral restriction. So it's not just about breastfeeding. I think it's just that with breastfeeding, the mom is oftentimes in pain or having more issues than the bottle, because the bottle is a little easier for babies. Also, if you had a baby that you're like, we couldn't breastfeed, we couldn't figure it out, and they're bottle feeding. Like, I might get curious about like why, because bottles haven't been around for that long and babies are designed to breastfeed, whether you want to breastfeed or not. That's not a judgy statement. That's just, we are, as a species,
Mm-hmm.
have been designed to do this, and if we can't, then why?
Mm-hmm. Something's
So yeah,
wrong.
ties affect a lot of things, and there's a lot of, the research around ties is kind of crappy, and I think that's where a lot of physician level people that want really strong evidence are looking at this going, this is like, there's a lot of correlation, and just because it's correlated with picky eating and speech issues, etc., doesn't mean that it is the cause, right? The one thing, though, I would say is that the only indication for treatment of an infant for frenectomy is feeding challenges. And so it's not like we would preventatively say, well, we're fine in feeding and everything is fine. We have none of those symptoms, but preventatively, we're going to release a tie in an infant. That wouldn't be the ethical route to do.
That makes sense. I've never thought of it like that. Okay, we're going to switch gears just a little bit. This is kind of an interesting topic that doesn't get talked about a lot, but is very important because I hear it from our clients quite a bit. Let's talk about intimacy and breastfeeding and feeling touched out as a new mother. Can we talk a
Yeah,
little bit about this?
Yeah, and I think this goes beyond breastfeeding as well. But as the mom and the kind of stereotypical point parent, the default parent, especially if you're breastfeeding, because if a new baby is fussy and dad has like burped and bounced and done the things, the next thing is going to be like, here's your baby,
Hand the baby
your
off.
baby's hungry, and my nipples are useless because I'm a male. Like they're going to pass the baby back to mom, and so there's a lot of demand that comes with being just the primary parent, and then there's another level of that when you're the primary breastfeeding parent. And you get touched out. You get a little like, many families that I find, they're not touched out by their baby, but what they're touched out by is the other humans that they can like say, hey, back up, and that means it's usually not our kids. It's usually our spouses, right? It's usually our people that were like, okay, my bubble is a little bigger right now because I'm never alone. Like, you might be the loneliest that you've ever been when you're a new postpartum mom, but you're never alone. And so that touched out feeling is tough, and there's a hormonal level to it too. Your estrogen is really low, so even if you are thinking about being intimate with your partner, you might need more lubrication, you might need more like foreplay, and physically it might not feel as good. And so that can feel tricky, and just knowing that like support, if you're here for it and you're in the mood and you're wanting that, just like get a really great lubricant and go for it, girl, like great. But also realizing that a good portion of us aren't there yet, and nothing magical happens at 6 weeks in your 6 week appointment where you get the all clear for sexual activity and exercise, etc. Like, no magic wand just like made your body in this wonderful place and your mind in this wonderful place. So I think like just really being open and having great communication with your partner that like, hey, a lot is demanded of me right now, especially if this is your first baby, because you walk into the hospital as Angela and you deliver a baby after 37 hours of labor at 1 o'clock in the morning, and your mom for the rest of your life. And that light switch is really a hard thing to dance with. It's easier with your subsequent babies because you've had that title. But just letting your partner know and like really building in the space for you to have space. And I'm a big advocate that like self-care is so
Mhm.
much more than a shower. That's just like basic human needs. But in the postpartum, like I call it the newborn forest, the first like fourth trimester, first 12 weeks of baby's life, because time is weird. You're a little like Alice in Wonderland. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what day it is. So when you're in that newborn forest, a shower alone might be self-care, and that is okay. But I think you can protect that intimacy of your marriage and your partnership just by building in some space that you're off shift so that you can kind of protect yourself from some of that touch out.
I wrote down self care as well. And like you said, it can be simple. So I think taking the time and carving out each day, even for 15 or 20 minutes, hand the baby off to someone. Even like we do day shifts for our families. And sometimes I'll tell the mom, I'll say, hey, when we're there, if you need to just go in your bedroom and shut the door and like go be by yourself for a little bit, that is a great idea. Just to decompress, to just have some alone time, to not be touched by anything for a little bit. That way you can refill your cup and then be present for the people who need you in your home. Even like, I also think changing scenery. So like getting in the car and just going to Starbucks and getting a coffee and coming back home, just that change of scenery, I think can also really, really help with just giving you a breath of fresh air to be able to like continue being a mom and a wife and a partner for the rest of the day. Um,
I totally agree. And even like,
yeah.
on those hard days with babies, because babies are just little humans, they have bad days too. And sometimes we're just within like the four walls of our house and we're like, gosh, we've tried everything and this baby's just cranky and I'm cranky and we can't co-regulate each other because, or we are co-regulating, but it's just in a negative way, right? Because we're both not okay. I always tell my families just add air or add water. Like take that baby in the shower with you or a bathtub if it's winter and you don't want to go outside, or just get outside. And sometimes it's a little bit like going to the gym, like it's you're dragging your feet to get there and to go on that walk and to load them into the stroller. But it's like as soon as that sunshine hits your face and that fresh air, you're like, oh, we're not just stuck in our four walls. Like,
Yes.
so add air or add water when you're having a bad day.
It's so true. As simple as it is, it's a game changer for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk a little bit about this? Is kind of a new term, but it's kind of interesting to talk about. Can we talk about maternal gatekeeping, how to avoid it, and how to engage in collaborative partner parenting?
Yeah. Um, I maternal gatekeeping, the idea, and I can't remember who coined it for the first time. I wish I could give them credit, but there is a person obviously that like made this term. But it's that idea that because moms often are the ones that, especially if you're breastfeeding, can like solve the problem, right? Or we are the ones that are kind of the default parents. We do it best. It's that idea that like I really am doing it best, can do it best. And by default of having that kind of idea within yourself, you kind of push away your partner and they end up being your backup instead of
Your
a
assistant.
yeah, they're like your assistant instead of your equal parent, right? And then yeah, they don't know, 9 months down the line, if you've had a baby and you've done everything, you've done every diaper change, you've done every bedtime, you've done all the things, but you're like, you know what, I'm going away for the weekend. And your partner looks at you like, well, how much does how much do they need to eat, and like what's nap time look like? You're going to look at them like laser beams, like, have you not lived in this home for 9 months? But it's pretty unfair because if you haven't allowed them to be a part of the actual like day-to-day tasks and scheduling and all of that, then how do you expect them to be able to know what to do? And it's a I think it's a little bit biological to want to really like care and be the main primary attachment for this infant. But I really try in all my prenatal classes. I have a prenatal parenthood prep class, and we talk a lot about this. Like, how can you protect yourself from maternal gatekeeping? How can you really rope in your person and parent together? And I tell people, just like I said, you walk into the hospital as yourself and you walk out as mom and you have this huge identity shift. It happens to the dad too, but we like don't really let them become and learn to be a dad at the same time as we are learning to be a mom. So I think like, you know, go forward as much as you can with the idea that you are like really trying to protect your parenting together and your relationship long term by doing it as a team. And they're always going to do it different because men are different.
Mhm.
Every human is different. So whether your spouse is a male or a female, they're going to do things differently than you, and that's okay because there's also not another person in this world that loves your child as much as they do. And so like letting it be different, and it's good for your kids to have differences in care.
Mhm.
So
I know a lot of our dads, especially, they're always eager to ask, what can I do? How can I help? Like, how can I be a part of this? And especially if it's a breastfeeding mother, like, there's, they can't really help with the feedings unless they're doing
Right.
a bottle, obviously. And so, as small as it seems, even just like the diaper changes, or I actually did an Instagram poll a few years ago and I just asked moms, like, what is the greatest thing your partner helped you with? And this is kind of funny, but a lot of them said, bring me snacks when I'm breastfeeding. So, like, as simple as that is, like allowing them to do that, change the diaper, like bring a snack, rub my feet while I'm nursing, like any of those small tasks. And also just being grateful and telling them thank you for these things that you're doing, because a lot of times moms think that they can't do it as well as they can. But just being grateful for what they are doing to help out with, I think is huge, especially
Yeah.
for men who are trying their very, very best to jump in and do all they can to help. And like you said, it's biological. Not all of them are wired like women to be able to do the things we can as well as we can. So being grateful for the little things that they are helping with goes a long
Yeah.
way.
And really like pointing those things out. I think like we as the mom and the primary parent are kind of almost expecting to society to, and not in a negative light, that sounds negative, and I'm not trying to connotate negativity here, but like we expect kind of praise, like, yeah, oh my gosh, you're like, you must be so tired, but look how amazing you're doing. But we don't give that to dads. Like, and so really patting them on the back and giving them the praise that we want to, I think is really important. And all of the stuff you just said, like bringing, yes, like please bring me food and my water. When you breastfeed and your oxytocin, that's the letdown hormone that squeezes your mammary tissue and pushes milk to your baby. When that flows, it triggers thirst. So that's why every time you sit down to breastfeed your baby, you're like, where is my emotional support water cup? And so, yeah, having partners that are just aware that this is a really demanding task on her body physically. So feed her, give her water, tell her that she's pretty and she's doing such a great job. And by doing those things, it leads back to what we were talking about with the intimacy. Like women are stereotypically really like, we need to feel seen, held, taken care of, like our cup is being filled by our partner before we then want to be physical with them. And so that just, it comes full circle. Like if you can loop your partner, have them help you and truly be a partner in your parenting, it's going to lead to things like wanting to be intimate with them, most likely. But the big thing I wish all dads listening, or all, if you want to send to your partner, learning how to figure out how to clean and assemble your breast pump and the bottles and do like that milk management, like so that all you have to do is create the milk and pump the milk. From there, it's their job to put it in the freezer, to label it, to clean your pump, to put your pump back together and make sure it lives where the pump should live. So when you sit down to pump, it's there. Those things are huge.
There was a meme going around a few years ago and it said something like, there's nothing sexier than the sorry, there's nothing sexier than a man that cleans your pump parts. Anyway, it was
100%.
hilarious and it went viral for that
I'm
very
sure it
reason.
did, because every mom that saw that was like, amen. Like,
Yeah, it really is true. Like if a dude can put together your pump, like that's pretty cool.
yes. And there are YouTube videos. I know y'all on YouTube. That's their
Hey, listen, they can put together a fishing pole and a
anything.
whatever,
You
yeah.
can assemble a
Don't
pump.
get me started on like their hunting trips and their fishing trips and all the things that they can put together for that. So they can figure out a pump.
100%.
Um, can we talk a little bit about, let's say there's a first time mom listening to this podcast and she wants to breastfeed. What things can she do to plan for the very best breastfeeding experience possible? Because a lot of our listeners are planners and they want to research. And so, what are some bullet points on some things they can do to best prepare for the best breastfeeding experience possible?
I think seeking out prenatal education. So really learning, like in our biology classes, we learned about a uterus. We learned about how like sperm and egg create a zygote and it becomes a baby, blah, 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 right? But we didn't learn anything about mammary glands. And we're mammals with mammary glands that feed our babies. And so seeking out prenatal education to where you really understand the science behind, and you don't have to geek out and go too deep. I always joke with my classes, like, we're not going to get too crazy, but the science is really interesting. And if you understand the foundation of that, then you have education leads to confidence, and confidence is the leading precursor in your ability to do whatever journey you want to do. It's your confidence level that is the number one indicator of the success of your journey. And so if you can boost your confidence by understanding and having a little bit of education, so I would highly suggest prenatal education, and that isn't always the class that's through your hospital. It might be finding something online that's like, I have mine in private practice, and we'll share that resource with you guys. But seeking things like that, doing prenatal education, finding get on the moms groups, ask who the favorite lactation consultant is, ask what pumps moms are loving. Hint, it's probably a lot of people are going to say wearable pumps, but I would proceed with caution as that is your primary pump. We really want a pump that plugs into the wall or has a rechargeable battery, just because they're stronger. But kind of set up your team, set up what success looks like for you, set up your education, figure out who your insurance covers so that you know that also this care team is attainable to you. All of those things, I think, just help us settle that hummingbird of anxiety in our chest when we don't know what we're walking into, right? We know we want something, but we have no idea what to expect. So if you can kind of and prenatal appointments, I will say, like, people that do a prenatal lactation visit, I don't think people really realize you can do that, but your insurance covers it. If your insurance is going to cover lactation, they're going to cover that. And you just get to know someone before you're in this super intimate setting with them and you're feeling very vulnerable. You're trying to feed your child and you need help, right? You already know them. You already have a rapport built up with them. I think, like, in a perfect world, if people line themselves up for success like that, they would have vastly different journeys.
That is one thing, like you mentioned, I was going to mention as well, is that a lactation consultant, first of all, it's a relationship. I mean, they're going to be with you for a while if you breastfeed for a while.
Don't like them, find another one.
Find another one. Second opinion.
Vibe with them.
Yeah. And if you do breastfeed your baby for a long time, you may have, it's not just going to always be smooth sailing. For the most part, you may have a question here or there. You may have a question when your baby's 2 months old and your lactation consultant is who you're going to speak with about that. But they do offer prenatal appointments. So the lactation consultant doesn't just see you after the baby arrives. They will come over to your home, or you'll see them in office beforehand, and they can get your medical history and kind of what your breastfeeding goals are. And that's a good way to kind of prepare for the breastfeeding journey. And then we teach a baby 101 class. A lot of people have education classes, but the word I hear the most, which is what you had said, when a parent takes our class or any education class to prepare for their baby, I hear the word confident, that they feel way more confident and ready to welcome their baby is just something I hear over and over and over. So like you said, get prepared, feel confident. And then another little piece of the puzzle with all this also, I feel like, is good nutrition if you're going to be breastfeeding. So making sure you have a good kind of like nutrition plan for postpartum.
And most of that's for recovery. Like, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on us as new moms, and we're so tired. You're so tired, right? Yeah. And then to have the, like, well, you need to be eating well pressure on you as well. So I think what I would say from the bottom of my heart is people across the globe breastfeed their babies. And there was one study I read that was talking about a malnourished village. And they wanted to know if more milk production happened when they supplemented 500 extra calories to a family. And milk production really didn't change. Wow. And so that's not to say that what you're eating doesn't, what changed was that mom's energy to meet her child's needs. So obviously there was more energy there. So I'm with you that nutrition heals our bodies. Nutrition helps us feel better, both mentally and physically. But it's also, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, nutrition is like where I really struggle. I know I should be eating differently. Like, there's so much you don't should all over people, right? We just need to do our best with what we have. Yes, getting protein in a perfect world, everyone would eat 80 grams of protein a day. But if you've ever tracked macros, that's a lot of protein. And so lining yourself up, have some protein bars, some nuts, things that you actually like to eat around at those snack stations for when you're nursing and pumping. Drink water to thirst. If you have your emotional support family, whatever brand you got, drink a couple of those a day. But I just don't want, I think there's so much pressure on us as parents, and everybody's just out here doing their best. For the most part, I think food is fuel, but do with it what you can.
Yes,
And what's
exactly.
attainable to you too.
I echo that.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite lactation resources? So again, let's say there's a new mom, she's getting online. Where would you even go to start to look for lactation resources and help online or well, I guess online. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a tricky place too, right? Because I said like social media is the search engine, and that's so true. And like I have a decent following on Instagram, and I'm out there, and I'm really passionate about putting great information out there. But there's also a vast array of people that look like might be a lactation consultant, but what are their credentials really, right? You don't even know. So my first thing would say, like, who you're following on socials, like really look for what their education is, because they might just be teaching to you from their experience, which there's knowledge and power in that, but it's also limited. I really love, I'm a Lactation League leader. Lactation League was started in 1956 in like the boom of kind of when formula was really coming around. And Lactation League is OG, but it is not your grandma's breastfeeding support. And they have fantastic resources. So their website is llli.org, and they have a whole section, I think it's called breastfeeding resources, on their website, where you can be 3 o'clock in the morning, as we are, on our phones with like nipple pain or a fussy baby, and you can click on all of these things and they'll have great evidence-based resources for you.
Okay.
I would just caution against Instagram's not always evidence-based. So really seeking out Lactation League's information. Academy of Breastfeeding Medicine has a bunch of parent language information. It's also for providers, but those would be my kind of two. Kelly Mom was like the OG great website, and she still has fantastic information. It's not updated as much, but she's another one, Kelly Mom.
Also, I'll tag you in our show notes, but if you want to drop yours as well right now, if someone's listening, what your handle
Yeah,
is.
you can follow me around the internet. I'm at Motherhood Untamed Lactation. Primarily, I'm on Instagram and Facebook.
She's awesome. Go follow her. Okay. Can you talk a little bit about the lactation consultant process, what that looks like, and what an office visit versus a home visit looks like? So if
Yeah,
someone calls a lactation nurse to come see them or they go to their office, what does that even look like?
yeah. So if you call a lactation consultant and you are having trouble with whatever it is, first and foremost in my clinic, I'll just speak to mine since that's my experience. We're going to talk about insurance. Are you hopeful to have your insurance cover, or are you self-paying? And we'll go through all of that. I will say last year, about 85% of my visits were covered in full or with a minimal copay to parents.
That's
So
wonderful.
know that like it is a resource, and it doesn't have to be desperation. Oftentimes we seek help when we're in crisis. I really wish people would seek help when they're just kind of like, I feel like this could be a little bit better. But we'll go through and find out if your insurance is covered, so you never have any surprise costs. Figure out if my clinic does virtual care, in-home care, and also we have an office. And so what does it feel best? Do you want me to also help you figure out how to use your space and utilize your pillows and your chairs and help you learn how to sideline nurse in your bed, all of those things? Then maybe a home visit's most appropriate. Or if you're a little anxious, you have dogs, you want to practice getting out of the house, then coming into the office is wonderful. A lot of times telehealth is kind of intake, kind of, we really need help now. We have an appointment scheduled in a few days, but let's hop on a call and give some tips and tricks in the meantime. Or distance, right? I have a large following. I see people all around the world, and so I do a lot of virtual telehealth as well. Visits are usually like, a short one would be 60 minutes. My follow-ups are 60 minutes, but for that first visit, we're together for about 90 minutes. And so a lot of times people are like, I'm trying to time the baby that they'll feed. And I tell them, like, you don't need to do that. We're going to be together. And so if we don't feed the baby until the end of the visit, that's okay. We're going to talk about milk production and how you're doing, and we'll weigh the baby, and we might do an oral evaluation. I'm really passionate about babies' body tension and how they're these little babies curled up like little shrimp. And then we live in a culture where we swaddle and we put them in buckets and we do the snoo and we do all of this restrictive swaddling and holding, that I talk to my families about rhythmic movements and helping their babies kind of unfold and take up space in this world. So it's a lot of time together. We cover a lot of ground. I always tell my parents, because they're very tired and in the newborn forest, that I'm not expecting or hoping for them to like take notes or sink in all of this. I send a very detailed follow up. I tell them it is not a sit down and read this email. It's like a reference back to this email, because I want you to get all the goodness that we share together, but I don't expect you to keep it in your brain from this one meeting. And so you'll have that to reflect back on and say, what did she talk about when she said I should do this kind of like movement with my baby? Well, I'll send you a video. And then from there, it's, we leave that meeting, whether we're scheduling a follow-up or whether it was just a fine tuning, right? Some people just need one visit, and it's like fine tuning. And then, like you said, Rachel, lactation consultants see you from prenatal and education all the way through weaning. And so that includes like, at 4 months, babies get a little tricky to feel or to feed because they've got FOMO going on. They're distracted. They no longer can be just out in the wild and breastfeed and they're fine. They're like popping off at every noise, and the dog and the husband walks in or whatever. And that can feel really tricky and overwhelming. We work with starting solid foods because that feels really tricky. And you're like, I don't know how to feed my baby. Well, lactation consultant can help you walk through that. So, and then all the way through to weaning. Sometimes when your menstrual cycle comes back, it can kick your milk supply in the tank a little bit. And so we navigate those kind of things. But yeah, so we're leaving it with maybe this was a complicated visit and we need more, and we'll schedule a follow-up. And those follow-ups are a miniature version of that, in that they're about 60 minutes long. But every visit's different. And usually it's like, I'm not going to say I'm like friends with all of my clients, but you really should vibe with the person that is giving you this personalized care. Same thing with what you do, Rachel. Like, you need to vibe with your people because they're coming into your home to support you and your new baby.
And a very vulnerable and intimate time in your life. Yes. It doesn't get any more vulnerable than having a new baby. So you need to love who's in your space during that time, for sure.
Totally. I mean, you need to feel like you can be unguarded.
100%.
And you just feel safe. I feel honored to be able to walk along in a pretty like holy space for family. Like, it is a very vulnerable thing to invite people into your nest when you've just had a baby. And that's not lost on me. And so I'm just honored to be a part of it with my fam. And honestly, it's so fun.
Yes, it is. It's so rewarding. Can we talk a little bit about nipple shields? And for example, I was in my Bible study class the other night, or Bible study group, and somehow nipple shields got brought up, and everyone started talking about, oh, I had a nipple shield. So it's kind of the word on the street. Can we talk a little bit about that for a minute?
Yeah. So like nipple shields are a silicone apparatus that has almost like a bottle teat looking to it. It has structure to it that you kind of invert a little bit so that you can get quite a bit of the nipple into the shield, and it goes on top of mom's anatomy to support feeding. And they get a little bit of a bad rap because they are the easiest way to latch a baby if you're struggling. And so if you're like an absolutely zero shade to hospital lactation, who I love, and they see so many babies and we need to get the baby to the breast and feeding, right? It's a great tool to help a baby that's struggling with that latch on, because it fills some more of their oral cavity than mom's anatomy might. And it really triggers that reflexive suckling, which is at the roof of baby's mouth, because there's more structure to it. It's in part why babies might suckle on a bottle, but might struggle to get into that latch and that suckle. So it can be a fantastic tool to help a baby get to the breast and to stay breastfeeding. There's a little bit of a risk that it impedes milk removal, but alternatively, it also helps a baby, like with a tongue tie, stay breastfeeding longer because it helps them create that intraoral vacuum that is what pulls milk from mom's body and helps baby breastfeed. And so they're honestly, they can be such a great tool. I do think that if they are given, my hope is that almost all of us want to breastfeed without tools, right? And so talking about risk benefit, like there might be a little bit of impeding of milk transfer. So we really want to make sure that baby's getting full and that our milk supply is getting stimulated. And we also want to talk about, like, how do we get baby's skill set? Why does baby need this nipple shield? Because no matter what presentation of nipple, they oftentimes are talked about, like, oh, if you have a flat nipple or you have an inverted nipple, so the actual tip of your nipple maybe dimples in just a little bit, then you're going to need a nipple shield. Well, babies breastfeed, and so we can have all variations of nipple presentations, and babies can successfully latch to just the breast. But they might need a little bit of help when maybe they're premature, maybe they're very tiny, maybe they had a traumatic birth, maybe they have a tongue tie, maybe they just have a lot of that, like, shrimp baby tension. They can be a really great tool, but I'm a firm believer that any tool that's given to a family, they need to have an exit plan and support to get to whatever their goal is. And if that's bare breastfeeding, then we need to be working on, why do we need this shield and how can we unwind from that?
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about low milk supply and then donor breast milk versus supplementing with formula, like proconning that?
Sure. Low milk supply is the perceived, like, that's the key word. Perceived low milk supply is really the number one reason for cessation of breastfeeding. And so milk supply, we won't go deep into milk supply because that's a whole podcast in and of itself. But the very basic foundation of milk supply is supply and demand. And it really stems from the first hours after birth. It's very important to have consistent demand on our body. Like, our body has birthed the baby, and now we need to give our body the signs that baby is here and we need to feed them. And that means a well-latched baby at the breast that's doing their job, not just nip napping, but actually, like, stimulating and removing milk, or hand expression. Oftentimes in those first few hours to the first 48 hours, our pump is really not where we should be leaning into. We should be doing hand expression because colostrum doesn't respond to a pump a lot of times, and body needs that demand to understand supply. There are a lot of reasons for low milk supply. Oftentimes it is lack of appropriate stimulation, whether that's a baby that was at the breast all the time but wasn't actually doing the task that we were hopeful that they would, or it was, separation, and we didn't understand how important, like, signaling our body about 8 times in 24 hours at a minimum by removing milk with hand expression or pumping, or having a baby latched. And so we have to work backwards a little bit. There can also be, like, anatomical things. Maybe during puberty, when your breasts grew, they didn't grow very much. Maybe it's always been something you've been a little self-conscious about. They're, like, atypical a little bit in presentation. All of those things, if you don't notice breast changes when you're pregnant, that's a really great indicator to seek a lactation consultant while you're pregnant and talk about your health history. Talk about the breast changes that you've seen, because that's kind of, it's not an all or nothing precursor to milk production, but that is kind of those milk glands peaking up with hormones and thinking, like, there's a baby on board that we're going to have to feed. And so low milk supply is so much more than just, like, popping onto a mom's group talking about lactation cookies. And again, going back to fueling our body with food, like, yes, feed your body well, but there's no magic bar. There's no magic thing. We should have well hydrated, including electrolytes and minerals. So yeah, the body armor thing, like, it doesn't need to be body armor, but it needs to be some electrolytes and minerals. And if that is not enough, then you need to be talking to somebody about, like, what's really going on. Is it thyroid? Is it anemia? Is it underlying PCOS? Is it insulin resistance? There's so many things that can impede our milk production. And so that's like a whole nut in its own that we won't crack too much.
Maybe we could have another podcast on that.
Right? Talking about milk. Donor milk and milks in general. There's a wonderful resource that came out kind of during the pandemic, I think, called Share the Drop. And there's also pages like Human Milk for Human Babies, often on social media. So difference between like getting milk bank milk, where it is pumped human milk. These parents have been through like a medical screening. Pediatrician often has to sign off like, yes, baby's growing well and mom has an excess supply. Mom's wellness provider usually has to check off they have had lab work done to make sure that they're healthy, they don't have any transmittable diseases, all of that. And then that milk actually gets pasteurized. And so when you get human milk from like the milk bank, it is pooled, all the donors are pooled together, and it goes through a Holder pasteurization process where it is in essence pasteurized at a low heat, and then separated out into volume and then purchased. And usually that's like short term if you're in the hospital and you're needing some donor milk when baby's just born. Some people do choose to buy donor milk, but it is very expensive. It's cost prohibitive for most families. And so families start going, well, I am choosing for my baby that I prefer human milk. What are my options? And that's where donor milk comes in, and milk sharing. I would call it milk sharing versus donor milk. Donor milk would be what we just talked about. It all gets pooled, it gets pasteurized, it gets sold. Milk sharing is like, hey, Rachel, I have a freezer full and you have a new baby and you have some need. Do you want some? And that's that informal milk sharing, which there are pros and cons to, right? You're pro, we keep our baby on human milk, and so we're not disrupting their biome, we're not doing all of that. There's absolutely like conversation I think is appropriate. Are you taking any medications? You know, postpartum is hard. Are you on SSRIs? Do you drink any alcohol? What's your caffeine intake like? Like, just so that it aligns with what you want in your fam. But yeah, that's kind of a beautiful option you see oftentimes again on the moms groups, like, hey, anybody have extra milk, or those human milk for human babies type resources.
One of my neighbors, she has one daughter who's 11 years old, and we were chatting the other day, and she was like, my daughter's never been sick ever. Like, even during COVID, she's never even had a cold, which I've never heard of, but she's like, she has never been sick. And then we kept talking, and she was like, you know what? When she was breastfeeding her daughter, she couldn't make enough milk, so she did the milk sharing. She got milk from lots of moms in the Southeast.
She got antibodies from all of those
36. She had 36 moms, I think.
That's amazing.
And her daughter has
a study on her.
Right? As we were talking, I was like, okay, this is so cool. But anyway, who knows why? But I, can't help but think all those antibodies had something to do with it. So that's pretty neat. But, well, thank you for your time today. Is there anything else you'd like to chat about or mention before we sign off here?
I don't think so. I think that just thank you for all the love you pour into families and this podcast and the opportunity to come on it. And all the families that are out here listening, just seek the team that feels good to you. And when you don't feel like you're being held and you don't feel like your goals are at the forefront, because they should be. This is not my journey. This is yours. And if you're not feeling like your key players, your pediatrician, your midwives, your lactation consultants, your postpartum doulas, your all of that, if you're not feeling like they're vibing with you, please pivot. Like, have the confidence to, I think we're all people pleasers and we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't have to be mean about it. We can be kind and say no thank you. So just be brave, trust your gut, and reach out to the people that make you feel good.
Yes. And if you are an expectant or new mom and you need lactation support, definitely reach out to Angela. Her Instagram is, say it again.
Motherhood Untamed Lactation.
Yep. Go follow her on Instagram. She has some awesome posts and information. And again, she does virtual consults if that sounds good to you. So,
and prenatal education too. So we will post that link as well, but you can just go to motherhooduntamed.com and you'll see right there at the top, shop classes.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. If you loved what you heard on our podcast today, don't forget you can learn even more with our new Newborn Care 101 online video course. This course is taught by me, a newborn registered nurse expert, and covers all kinds of newborn education, including swaddling, diapering, bathing, breastfeeding, how to use your breast pump and car seat, sleep training, and much, much more. You also get free access to our online course community, which gives you direct access to me, Rachel, for any newborn questions along the way. Our podcast listeners get a special discount, so make sure to use coupon code PODCAST in all caps at the checkout. The link to purchase this course is in show notes below. Thanks so much and have a great day. Although I am a nurse, I am not your medical provider, and any information from me is purely educational and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult a professional for your particular situation before making any decisions. My opinion about any brands we mention on the podcast is based on my personal experience and is not an endorsement about the suitability of any products for your particular need.